Hello everyone and welcome back to another AFK journey video. In this video, we're going to recap the Dauntless squad, THALASSA, top performing teams from all of the testing on the Pioneer server, because now we have Dauntless squad live on the global server. So the overall top performing team has this formation. It is a physical damage dealer team on team number 1. Rhys and Seth are going to be your prime carriers because they contribute the most damage to this team. Kruger provides the debuffs to increase physical damage further. Shakir will buff up your grouped up allied team, and Mikola will provide the attack buff and haste for your team. Team number 2 is a magical damage dealer team with Odie and Elsa as your prime carriers. They both contribute a very high amount of damage, especially Elsa, and she will want to be on the overloaded charms. This is the number 1 priority for both of your two teams, the overloaded onto Elsa and the Gale charms onto Odie, because when you take a look at the damage output, they deal some of the highest damage across the two teams. Smokey should have skill power charms, either recovering or sorcery. Both can work out fine for him. And the team number 2 is going to be using the arcane spell, whereas team number 1 is using the greatsword spell, because that increases your physical damage further by reducing the physical defense of the boss as well. Taking a look at the charms, Kruger is going to be on the mystic charms. These are double offensive and they provide him increase to his damage, and his damage is surprisingly high in this Ravaged Realm boss. Shakira is going to be on the mystic charms, which you'll have for Dream Realm already. Mikola on the arcane charms. Seth is on this team on the Ruthless charms, but there has been a lot of testing with him on the mystic charms as well, and he does great on those too. So you can try either of the two. Maybe even if you have arcane charms, you could try that, but I haven't seen much testing of Seth with the arcane charms, so I can't say for sure about that. But he is also a major priority. If you have Seth built and you're planning to run this team, you want to get his charms. Rhys with the Butcher charms, he contributes a good amount of damage. Not as much as Seth, but still a good amount. Now the question is, let's say you don't have Rhys, or if your Rhys is at a lower ascension. You can try this team. Maybe if your Rhys is even Legendary Plus, this team can still maybe be the best for you. However, if you don't have him at all, Rhys for example, there is another team that we will show you later on. But for right now, we're going to take a look at the replay to see the team in action. So with the THALASSA, the team 1 always ends up having a risk of dying towards the end, because the boss ends up dealing a lot of damage to your team. Like, based on the damage you deal to the boss ends up ramping up faster. And so that is why the team 1s of the THALASSA Ravaged Realm usually have a better, more difficulty surviving. So in this position, Shakir is great. Like, Shakir is buffing up Mikola, and I believe even the Seth from this position, which is pretty much perfect. You cannot have an even better positioning for the Shakir, because it is not possible for him to be in the middle position of the map, because you have the tentacles which keep spawning, and then he will have to go and clear them. So there you saw a pretty big damage burst, but thankfully the whole team was able to take it, and there Rhys goes down. So even in the top scoring team, Rhys dies at the 20-second left mark, and there's not really anything you can do about it, because the boss ends up hitting way too hard. And this is the reason why Seth kind of heavily outdamaged Rhys, because Rhys just ended up dying and missed out on 20 seconds of damage, and that is why Seth did a lot more than Rhys, and like, it looks kind of off balance. Taking a look at the replay of team number 2, team number 2 is pretty safe. Number 1, you have a good healer of Smokey. I know Smokey does get interrupted a bit in this boss fight, because the boss can move the Smokey and stun the Smokey. Both of these will interrupt him casting his aura, but for the most part, his aura is going to be active for most of the fight and providing the attack buff to his allies. And because it's team number 2 and you're not dealing as much damage, the boss is not ramping up out of control, for example, and there's not going to be major issues of surviving. It's interesting though that Arcane Spell is actually the best option for this team. Sometimes Resonating Spell has been tried by people, and it does well, especially in this comp, because Elsa is casting ultimate so frequently, and you would have the resonating spell onto Odie. However, I think maybe because you're lacking enough allies, resonating spell is not actually as good as arcane spell, and arcane spell also gives you the penetration to increase your damage further, which is really valuable. But after watching this replay, I'm going to show you guys the other top performing team formation which has been shared, also getting 107 billion damage, and that team has exactly the same 8 heroes, but it has a magical team on team number 1 and a physical team on team number 2. So that is another great option for you to try and see which one is doing better for your account, depending on, for example, your level of investment and also which charms you have equipped to the heroes. So overall, that was a great team. Now taking a look at this other team, which is doing really well as well. Magical on team number 1 with resonating spell on Odie. As for the charms, they are exactly identical to before, but here the Shakir actually is on the eagle charms. I don't know necessarily if this is better. Like I would think that you could run the mystic charms and it would still be fine, but yeah, this is just how the person ran it. Rhys is on the Butcher Charms. Kruger here is on the Cheetah Charms, but he doesn't need it because he doesn't have an issue surviving in this fight. So it would be better for you to go just for the Mystic Charms to increase his damage. But really what I find interesting about this team, and we've talked about it before, is Kruger on the buff tile. You would think that Seth would do better on the buff tile because overall Seth's damage output is higher than Kruger. And so he would make better use of the 40% bonus damage being dealt. But for whatever reason, the Kruger is doing better on the buff tile. And you can try both. But basically, if you're running a physical team, it should be these 3 heroes for team number 2 or the team number 1 we showed earlier. Okay, and those are the overall top performing teams. Now, if you don't have Rhys, there is a really good team. There is one burial team. However, I don't know if I can really recommend this because even people who have burial, sometimes even a legendary plus Rhys, for example, in the one of the first 2 teams we showed, is going to do better for you than running burial at all. And so maybe it isn't even a good idea to try to run burial. Also, the other thing is that if someone has burial on their account, more than likely they'll have Rhys built as well. Not always, because like I have a viewer who we did testing now on his account, and he had burial but only legendary plus Rhys, but still Rhys was kind of doing better for him. Anyway, here we have the burial team. If you want to take a look at it, the charms for burial are Reaper charms. They give attack percent. The execution, I think, is kind of wasted. And here were the other charms. If you want to take a look at them just briefly, and he's trying frontline spell on team number 2 rather than, because no Rhys, right? So you can activate the frontline spell. So this is another team you can try. It did get 103 billion in the testing, but here is another great team that is not using Rhys at all, and in fact using Koko. So this is a much more free-to-play friendly team. However, it does have Seth. Seth is really a key player in this Ravaged Realm, even more important than Rhys in my opinion. And so Seth is really important. Like if you don't already have Seth built right now, you should keep him on your wish list, because even last Ravaged Realm, this Ravaged Realm, and probably in the future, he will always have a place. And even like in Relentless Rumbles, he's been really good. So great sword spell on this team. Interestingly, that Koko is on the buff tile along with Seth. I think one reason for that is then she ends up going to the front line, and she can be buffed up by the Shakir, and that will benefit your other allies as well because his overall attack buff value will be increased. Also, Mikola can buff up the Koko with the Courage Sphere when Koko is up in the front. So this is kind of why this team is working well. And energy on hit charms for the Koko, which are the sturdy charms. Seth for the mystic charms, Mikola arcane charms, Shakira mystic charms, and Kruger mystic charms. With the great sword spell, this is the team formation. And for team number 2, it is exactly the same as the first team we showed. Magical damage dealer team on number 2, which is the Odie, Elsa, and Smokey. And so this is another great team option that you can try. So we'll just quickly take a look at the replay of team number 1, because here is the Koko on the buff tile team. I want to see why this team is working out well. But overall, this team got 102 billion and it doesn't have a Rhys in it, so it can be a good option if you don't have it. However, I've looked for other teams, like for example, no Rhys, no Seth, or no Rhys, no Elsa. There are not any other teams like that. I think there was just not enough testing being done. So what I would recommend is try running one of these teams, even if your heroes are missing out on some of the ascension. And if it is still not working, you can come up with some other combination of your Molly heroes, like for example here, just outright replacing Rhys for Koko and not doing too much worse, to be honest. And especially Koko has a good place in team number 1, because team number 1 has the potential of dying, right? And Koko will protect your team even further, basically ensuring that they're never going to die. And if you look at the Koko is not in range for the Shakira buff, but Kruger is in range for the Shakira buff, and it might have been due to the fact that Koko is here. Like Koko kind of prevents Kruger from being off to the left, and now Kruger is in a position that he is being buffed up by the Shakira. Either way, this was a great team. 54 billion without Rhys on it is very impressive. So anyway guys, hopefully you can put together one of these teams and get a top score for the Dauntless squad. If there are any new teams which come out which you should be running, I will make an updated video about that. But for right now, these are going to be great teams and should allow you to compete and get to the highest ranking, because yeah, a lot of people did a lot of testing on the Pioneer server. It will be difficult to improve upon these teams. So thanks for watching. I'll hope to see you guys in the next video, and I also hope that you guys got a good score yesterday in the Immortal squad. You can let me know what score you did and what team you ran, but I'll hope to see you guys in the next video, and until then, everyone, peace out for now, and thank you for watching.